I'm sure you're asked about this scene constantly, but the interrogation scene from Menace to Society, I was wondering if you could just, I know this is probably you've been asked this question so much.
I had to be on the set, the Hughes brothers. And I just loved their work. I liked who they were. I read the script and I loved it. There's only one scene.
I said, Bill, can I talk to you for a second? He said, yeah. I said, can you do me a favor? Can you curse, like rough him up a little bit with, like pistol whip with your mouth? Yeah. And he says, yeah, but not too much. And I go, no. I said, yeah, just a little bit.
In 1993, Menace to Society exploded onto screens. It was violent, raw, and unforgettable. But there's a dark secret around the film. One short scene still overshadows the film.
Now you see something. Now you see now. You the
Why did a brief appearance spark envy, tension, and even Hollywood battles? From Tupac's clash with the directors to censorship wars and uneasy legacies, and the questions never died.
I was going to choose a career before I choose my principles, my manhood. So I said, okay, cool, fire me from this $100,000 movie because I ain't gonna play no gangbanger who's a Muslim.
This is the untold story of how one man changed the legacy of Menace to Society. The movie, Menace to Society, was packed with young rising stars. Tyron Turner played Kane. Lorenz Tate played O-Dog.
Hey man, so you like my little tape?
Both were supposed to be the heart of the story. But when Bill Duke walked into that interrogation room as the detective, everything changed.
I want to ask you some real simple questions and I want some real simple answers. You understand?
Bill Duke didn't have much screen time. His role was short, only a few minutes, but the delivery was unforgettable. He leaned forward, locked eyes with Kane, and dropped the line that would echo across decades. "You done up, you know that, don't you?" That single sentence became the most quoted moment of the whole movie. Fans repeated it everywhere, in barbershops, schools, and later online. It became a cultural stamp, one of the most famous movie quotes of the 1990s. What made it so powerful was Duke's delivery. He didn't yell, he didn't overact. He spoke with quiet authority, and it shook the audience. Many people forgot he was even playing a character. It felt like a real detective was in the room. Even though Tyron Turner and Lorenz Tate carried the bulk of the story, Duke's small role cast a shadow. People walked out of theaters talking about that one line.
Now you see something. Now you see now. You the
Decades later, Duke himself admitted he was surprised by how much attention the cameo got. In an interview, he explained how he approached the scene: calm, measured, but intimidating. He said the goal was to make the audience lean forward and feel uncomfortable, as if they were the ones being interrogated. That approach worked too well. Critics pointed out that in just one scene, Duke gave the film its most iconic moment. For the younger actors who were trying to build their names, this sudden spotlight on Duke may have been frustrating. They carried the weight of the entire movie. Yet it was the veteran who left the deepest mark. And that's the strange thing about Hollywood cameos. Sometimes, a polished actor with years of experience can walk into a film, speak for 5 minutes, and end up being the most remembered part. That was exactly what happened here. By the time the movie reached cult status, Duke's line wasn't just dialogue. It was the brand of Menace to Society. It showed up in parodies, rap lyrics, and internet memes. For many people, the detective's voice became the movie itself. And this was just the beginning of the tension surrounding the film. Because while Duke's cameo was stealing attention on screen, off-screen the set was already boiling with arguments, jealousy, and one of the most shocking incidents in hip-hop film history. When a veteran like Bill Duke shows up on set, the entire energy changes. By the time Menace to Society was filming in the early 1990s, Duke wasn't just another actor. He was already a name with serious weight.
He'll come back again, and when he does, I'm gonna cut your name right in two.
He had played memorable roles in films like Predator alongside Arnold Schwarzenegger, Commando with the same action star, and American Gigolo opposite Richard Gere.
Okay.
He had also stepped behind the camera, directing Deep Cover with Lawrence Fishburne, which became a cult classic in its own right. So when Duke walked onto the set of the Hughes brothers' debut feature, He didn't arrive as a man trying to prove himself. He was already established. His reputation spoke before he even said a word. For younger stars like Tyrin Turner, who played Kane, and Lawrence Tate, who portrayed O-Dog, this film wasn't just another role. It was their shot at stardom. They were the new blood, the faces expected to carry the entire story from beginning to end. Their names weren't household yet, but this was the project that could change that. And in many ways, it did.
What I didn't know is that it would be this iconic. I didn't know that. I just knew it was gonna be I said, ooh. I knew this. What I knew. I said, oh, Boys in the Hood is in trouble.
But then there was Bill Duke. His part wasn't large. In fact, it was technically a cameo. He played a detective who interrogates Kane in one of the film's most intense scenes. Yet despite appearing in only a few minutes of screen time, Duke left the audience buzzing. His delivery was sharp, his presence intimidating, and the way he leaned into the role gave it a weight that went beyond the script.
And these kids who are a menace to society are just not going to go away.
They're not going to go away. The society has made them that, you know.
Let's look at a clip of your work in which one of your primary characters is being cross-examined by a detective played by Bill Duke.
Great scene.
Industry insiders later pointed to what's often called the spotlight effect. It's a phenomenon where a seasoned performer enters a film, even briefly, and immediately commands all attention. It doesn't necessarily mean the younger actors were weak or unprepared. In fact, Turner and Tate gave strong performances that carried the movie's emotional core. But Duke's outstanding performance was undeniable. When he appeared, you couldn't look away. Some fans and commentators have long speculated that this imbalance created jealousy on set. While no one has ever openly confirmed it, the dynamics were clear. The newcomers were fighting for recognition, while Duke could walk in for a single afternoon of shooting and deliver the most talked about moment in the film. For the Hughes brothers, Alan and Albert, bringing in Duke was a calculated move. They were young directors making their first major feature. They needed their film to stand out not just as another hood drama, but as something with authenticity and credibility. Casting Duke in a short but unforgettable cameo gave them that edge. His involvement signaled to critics and audiences alike that Menace to Society wasn't just another street film. It was a project serious enough to attract a veteran with dignity. But that decision came with consequences. When audiences left the theaters, many weren't just praising Tyrin Turner's emotional journey or Larenz Tate's raw intensity. They were talking about the detective, about Duke, about the short scene that seemed to overshadow so much else. This wasn't new to Hollywood. History is full of films where a supporting actor or cameo performer stole the spotlight from the leads. But for Turner and Tate, both eager to cement their place in the industry, the timing of Duke's dominance stung. Their film was supposed to showcase their rise, but Duke's presence ensured that the conversation was split. As production continued, that undercurrent of tension never fully disappeared, and soon, another element would push the drama even further. A casting choice involving a young Tupac Shakur, a rising star in both music and film, ignited its own wave of controversy. Because if Bill Duke's scene rattled the balance, Tupac's presence on set threatened to blow the entire project wide open. When the casting process for Menace to Society began, it wasn't just another hood film trying to get off the ground. The Hughes brothers were young, hungry directors, and they wanted a cast that reflected real street life, but also had cultural weight. That's why, when Tupac Amaru Shakur's name came up, the choice felt natural. By the early 90s, Tupac wasn't just a rapper on the rise. He was already proving himself as a serious actor. His breakout role in Juice in 1992, where he played the unpredictable Bishop, showed Hollywood he could carry dramatic weight. Fans were eager to see his next move on screen, so when he was lined up to play Sharif, the Muslim character in Menace to Society, expectations shot through the roof.
And thought I was going to choose a career before I choose my principles.
But almost immediately, tension boiled between Tupac and the Hughes brothers. The issue? The way Sharif was written. In the script, Sharif was a former gang member who had turned Muslim, preaching to his friends about living clean while still being tied to the streets. Tupac didn't buy it. He argued there was no such thing as a Muslim gangbanger, that the role was fake, a stereotype, and something that disrespected the culture. His stance was direct, even blunt. He told them, "I refuse to play parts that don't exist."
I ain't gonna play no gangbanger who's a Muslim. There ain't no such thing. I refuse to play parts that don't exist.
The Hughes brothers disagreed. To them, Sharif was essential, a character who showed a different side of the streets, someone caught between past mistakes and new beliefs. They insisted it was part of their vision for the film. Tupac wasn't convinced. What started as creative disagreements quickly turned into heated arguments on set. For a young production already managing egos, inexperience, and budget pressure, the feud became too much. Eventually, the directors made a bold call. They fired Tupac. The decision sent shockwaves through both Hollywood and the hip-hop world. Firing one of the hottest names at the time was no small move. But the story didn't end there. Not long after, during a confrontation in Los Angeles, everything boiled over. Tupac and Allen Hughes crossed paths, and instead of words, fists flew. Tupac and members of his crew attacked Hughes, leaving him battered. The fight made headlines.
So I'm not going to go blow by blow, but what ultimately we all know what happened is those 10, 15 guys jumped me, you know. Now, Tupac started with a sucker punch, I'll say that much.
Allen Hughes later took the matter to court. The trial ended with Tupac being convicted of assault and battery. He was sentenced to 15 days in jail, a punishment that, while short, made national news. Cameras captured Tupac walking into the courtroom. Reporters shouted questions, and once again, his name was tied to controversy. For Hollywood, the incident was a wake-up call. This wasn't just an artist with strong opinions. This was a star whose clashes could turn physical. And for the Hughes brothers, it was a scar they carried for years. Even in later interviews, Allen Hughes admitted that firing Tupac and then being attacked for it was one of the most dramatic episodes of his career.
Whatever the argument was about, Tupac was at a place in his life where he just couldn't be put into any kind of box. And when you're making a movie, that's what that is.
Fans still wonder how different Menace to Society would have been if Tupac had stayed in the role of Sharif. Some believe his presence would have elevated the film even more, giving it a raw authenticity. Others argue his charisma might have pulled focus from the leads, just like Bill Duke's cameo did. What's certain is that his absence reshaped the movie, leaving audiences with a version of Sharif that felt quieter than originally intended. But instead of boosting the project with star power, Tupac's firing and the violent aftermath hung over the film like a cloud. Entertainment reporters covered the assault and trial more than the film itself. At premieres and press runs, questions about Tupac often overshadowed the movie's storyline. For the rest of the cast, including Bill Duke, the situation blurred the line between art and chaos. What should have been a straightforward film shoot was now tied to scandal, courtrooms, and police reports. And while the movie itself pushed the envelope with its raw violence and realism, those weren't the only battles the Hughes brothers had to fight. Long before the MPAA stepped in to slash their scenes, the production had already gone through its biggest explosion, Tupac Shakur. From the very beginning, the Hughes brothers were clear about what they were trying to do with Menace to Society. They wanted to show violence the way it actually feels, sudden, shocking, and without glamour. In their own words, it was meant to be an anti-violent film. By laying out the brutality without music cues or heroic framing, they believed audiences would be discouraged from idolizing the life.
We were frustrated and tired of white people saying they deserve what they get. They're just little gangbangers and they deserve to be treated the way they're.
But when the film reached the MPAA, the reaction was completely different. The ratings board flagged it for extreme violence. Every shooting, every close-up of blood, and every scene of raw confrontation became points of contention. For the Hughes brothers, who believed they were sending a warning, it felt like punishment for telling the truth. The MPAA was not the only obstacle. The marketing campaign quickly became another battlefield. The original posters for Menace to Society showed young black men holding guns, an image that reflected the tone of the movie. But the MPAA and the studio's advertising department pushed back. They said it was too aggressive, too dangerous. The images were ordered to be airbrushed, softening the edges, removing the weapons, and muting the impact. What was once a bold statement turned into something safer for the mainstream. This infuriated the directors. They had made a film that refused to glamorize violence, yet the industry treated it as if it was celebrating it. Their perspective was simple. If audiences saw the film the way it was intended, they would understand it as a warning. But Hollywood's system, controlled by cautious marketing executives and the MPAA, did not know how to handle something that raw and unfiltered. The criticism extended beyond censorship. Almost immediately, critics began to label the movie as a hood film. It was put in the same category as Boys and the Hood and Juice. For the Hughes brothers, this label was not just frustrating, it was insulting. They argued that white directors did not face this kind of pigeonholing. Martin Scorsese was never called a mob filmmaker, even though his films like Goodfellas and Casino were filled with crime, murder, and gangsters. He was celebrated as an auteur. The Hughes brothers, meanwhile, were boxed into a category based entirely on race and background.
We thought that the news media was not explaining the inner city that well. They had not done any real in-depth journalism.
Reporters added to the frustration. In interview after interview, questions circled back to their personal upbringing. They were asked about the streets they grew up on, as if their biography was the only reason they could tell this story. The brothers pushed back, reminding people that directors of other races were never forced to justify their work in personal terms. Steven Spielberg was not asked if he had lived through an alien invasion when he made E.T. Scorsese was not asked if he ran with mobsters to make Goodfellas. Yet the Hughes brothers were constantly asked to tie Menace to society to their personal lives. This double standard cut deep. Instead of being viewed as directors with a wide range of potential stories, they were seen as representatives of a single genre, locked into hood storytelling. That label would shadow their careers, making it harder to branch out or be judged on artistic merit alone. As all this played out in the press, the battle over the MPAA cuts, the censorship of posters, and the constant media labeling, another reality was forming inside the film itself. On screen, the person audiences remembered most was not the new leads or even the director's vision. It was Bill Duke. His short but unforgettable cameo became the moment that defined the film for many viewers. And while that was happening inside the movie, outside of it, Bill Duke was preparing to confront his own struggles and challenges away from the set. Bill Duke's life wasn't just about acting and directing. From the very beginning, he faced struggles that shaped who he was on and off screen.
No matter what country I go to, I've made a lot of films as an actor and director.
As a child, he was attacked by white bikers. They beat him and threw racial slurs at him. It was a brutal lesson about racism, and it stayed with him for life. Later, he faced colorism. Because of his dark complexion, he often felt judged by society. In one interview, he admitted that at one point he even considered not having children because he didn't want them to suffer from the same bias he endured.
It kind of put another question on my racism, put it that way.
Then came health struggles. While in college, Duke was diagnosed with ulcerative colitis. It was a painful, lifelong condition. Years later, during a routine checkup, doctors found colorectal cancer. Thanks to early screenings and the encouragement of his daughter, he survived. In Hollywood, he faced gatekeepers at every turn. He spoke openly about being rejected over and over, not because of his talent, but because of systemic barriers in the industry. The toll was emotional and psychological, but he kept pushing, finding ways to act and direct even when doors were closed. Duke wasn't afraid of confrontation either. In one viral clip, he called out the myth that talent alone makes someone successful. He pointed to Tyler Perry as an example, saying there's far more happening behind fame than just talent. The exchange stirred debates across the industry.
My genius is the God within me.
Duke also used his platform to amplify voices. His documentary Dark Girls shined a light on colorism and the struggles darker-skinned women face. He wanted to give them visibility, and validation in a society that often erased their stories. Through it all, Duke showed dedication. He wasn't just a cameo actor. He was a survivor, a director, and an outspoken voice against injustice. And even as he faced his own battles, he never stopped working. By the time Bill Duke turned 82, his career was already legendary. He had acted in classics like Predator, where he played alongside Arnold Schwarzenegger. He was in Commando, American Gigolo, and of course, Menace to Society. As a director, his range was just as strong. He made Deep Cover, a gritty undercover cop drama starring Lawrence Fishburne. He directed Sister Act 2, a completely different genre, showing his versatility. But no matter how much he achieved, one role kept coming back: the detective in Menace to Society. Fans still quote his line to this day. The internet turned it into memes. Rappers reference it in their music. Critics call it one of the most iconic cameos in modern cinema. For the Hughes brothers, that moment gave their film a lasting stamp. For the young actors, it was both a blessing and a shadow. And for Bill Duke, it was proof that even a short appearance could leave an eternal mark. At 82, Duke speaks openly about the dark secrets behind the movie: the jealousy, the censorship, the chaos, and the spotlight effect that followed him everywhere. But he also reflects on the fact that through all of it, the movie survived. Today, when people talk about Menace to Society, they mention the violence, the controversy, Tupac's firing, and the Hughes brothers' battles with Hollywood. But more than anything, they remember one thing: a calm detective leaning forward, staring into the camera, and saying words that would never be forgotten. You done up. You know that, don't you?
No matter what country I go to, I've made a lot of films as an actor and director. And the line that said to me the most around the world, no matter what city I go from, and you know something? They're young kids.
And with that, Bill Duke's legacy lives on. Bigger than a cameo, bigger than the controversy, forever part of film history.